Cam?
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Creative Network. The Creative Network is brought to you by Ignite Somerset, and Ignite Somerset is a project that's managed by Somerset Film and is funded by Arts Council England. Normally, we would run the Creative Network at the engine room in Bridgewater, home to Somerset Film. And of course, we're not able to do that at the moment for obvious reasons. So what we've been doing recently for the past 3 networks is live streaming them on Facebook and YouTube. So hopefully you're getting this live stream directly to your YouTube or your Facebook on your computer. Now, one artist that's had to really think carefully about how they deal with this lockdown situation is a theatre maker I know quite well called Richard Crowe, who you should see on your screen right now, who's keeping nice and quiet at the moment. And now, Richard is a theatre maker, and just a few weeks ago, Richard was in full swing working on the production of a musical that was about to have a theatrical release, and all sorts of other projects that were going to be live all around the county. And of course, that creative flow was interrupted by lockdown. So Richard is a really good example of an artist who's needed to really rethink, kind of recalculate that workflow and that process, particularly as Richard's work involved a lot of young people who were participating in this musical. So it's fantastic that Richard's able to join us today and tell us a little bit about how he's coped with making that transition into a purely digital space. But also, this is, a chat that's unrehearsed, so we might go anywhere. And very much at the heart of Richard's work is the theme of mental health, particularly men's mental health, actually. So who knows where we'll end up. So I'm going to unmute Richard's microphone and let's say hello. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. I'm Richard Tomlinson, by the way. I didn't introduce myself. I've introduced you, Richard, but not myself. So, to start with, actually, before we look at any video clips, we've got some nice video clips lined up of your work. I've got a question that the producer over at Somerset Film has asked me to ask you, and it's this. I'd like to ask Richard about the use of digital. Does Richard think that audiences connect with the writing in the same way as they do when they're in a seated auditorium?
My simple answer to this is yes. We've been doing this for nearly 100 years now, writing for cinema and writing for TV as well as for the stage. And if the quality of the writing is good, then the audience will connect with it. There's good writing in the theatre. There's bad writing in the theatre. God knows we've all seen enough of that. And same for cinema and for TV. But I'm doing this the lockdown thing of catching up with all these box sets that I haven't seen before, and one of them is Broadchurch. The writing in Broadchurch is absolutely excellent, which is why it won so many awards and why it was so popular. So connecting with that, no problem at all. Edge of the seat stuff, I'm completely compelled. it's a different thing. And I mean, the same thing about performances. I mean, obviously, live performances can be good, they can be bad, they can be good and bad on screen. There is something, however, which is fundamentally very different about a live experience in a theatre, and it's somewhere around that whole thing of those geeks, not those geeks, but those ghouls who go to circus because they think somebody's going to fall off the trapeze, and that's why they go. That's why it's exciting for them. And it's something in there that there is something about that you know, it could go wrong. There's no chance to stop and do another take. There's no stopping and starting. So and that frisson, if you like, nice word. There's something about that which makes live theatre very different and a very different experience. So it's not the writing, it's not the performing. For me, it's about it's live. Anything could happen. And quite often, anything does happen. So the trick then is not letting the audience know that it's happened. But that's what it's about for me. It's that immediacy and the fact that you don't get a second chance at it.
Okay, thank you for that. And you got the word frisson in there as well, which is just fantastic.
More than one. It's probably my word of the day.
So talking about live situations, we are live now, and I realised that as you were talking away, I had two mics open, so people at home might have got a little bit of an echo. So I'll try and sort out that technicality as we go on. Anyway, before we proceed, as indicated in the publicity for this live stream and for this creative network, our chat, and as I said earlier, it's not rehearsed. We might go anywhere with this. But we might touch on topics which may trigger unlooked for reactions. And if you experience any distress, I'm just going to put a bit of information up for your info. So if you experience any distress following this discussion, you need to talk to someone, get advice. The Samaritans are there 24/7 on 116123. And you'll find lots of useful information at mind.org.uk. And you can speak to someone at Mind 24/7 on 01823 276 892. And maybe take a look at rethink.org and click on the Somerset Recovery Wellbeing Alliance tab. I'll put this information up again at the end of our chat, I think. Okay, so Richard, before we come on to showing some of your work, which I'm sure everybody's tuned in to see, I just wanted to share an experience I had on a project about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, at Somerset Film. We got to help facilitate a project working with Dr. John Barnes, who's a consultant psychiatrist with Somerset Partnership NHS Trust, and we got to work with the team at a mental health ward in Bridgewater. The project was called Creative City Somerset, and it gave people an opportunity to explore a range of creative activities and to communicate something about how they were feeling. We all got to have a go at African drumming. We all got to have a go at songwriting, and we all got to have a go at making a music video. My involvement in it was to help the musicians working with the guy who was guiding the music process, who's called Vinny Peculiar. Any musos out there might know of Vinny Peculiar, yeah, together we worked on this little project, and I just thought it set the scene quite nicely for our discussion. So I'm going to just see if I can bring that little video up. Here we go.
The Creative City project enabled local people with mental health difficulties to explore their creativity through African drumming, image making and songwriting workshops.
the way in which people engaged with not just the songwriting but the visual creativity as well.
Learned some new skills, got to meet new people. It's been really good.
Okay, so what we saw there was actually not the film in its entirety. We saw a little trailer, if you like, that just gave you a taste of the different activities. I learnt a lot on that project, about the power of the creativity, and how sometimes it can kind of reach the parts that other things that you might do might not reach. Anyway, I've got some more questions for you. So, and this brings me, these questions, actually, I mentioned Dr. John Barnes earlier, who was involved in that Creative City Somerset project. And he's got a couple of questions he would particularly like to ask. How far have we come, Richard, in dealing with stigma, and what should the next step be?
That's an interesting question. Not far enough, frankly. There are still appalling problems in this country with men particularly experiencing mental health problems, not feeling that they're able to talk to anybody about it because they feel they'll get labelled as a shirker or as not manly enough or whatever else it might be. And as a consequence of that, we have an appalling suicide record amongst men. I think I'm right in saying, and look it up or whatever, but I think I'm right in saying that suicide is the biggest killer of men now under the age of 45. And I think that's appalling. I think that's dreadful in a country like ours, which is supposed to be advanced and civilized, etc., etc. More or less of that later, I suppose. And I think it's still really sad that there are many men out there who suffer silently and alone, and they can't even talk to their partners about the feelings that they're having and the bleakness that they feel, and anxiety and depression, that I'm assuming, I think, is all to do with the stigma that they think that brings on themselves if they do admit to that what they perceive as weakness. We are not a very sympathetic society when it comes to men being weak. There's all sorts of other things wrong with our society, but just for now, I'm just concentrating on men with mental health problems, and that is abysmal. It's appalling. Finished.
Okay, thanks for that. So another question that John asks is, what are the things that you would like to see in mental health professionals?
I'd like to see mental health professionals better supported. I'd like to see more money from the NHS going to mental health. It's an appalling imbalance between physical disability and mental disability, if you want to use that word. I think we need to address that. I think we need more services. We need more access to services. We need services to be available more quickly, because otherwise people might actually, that might be it. That might be the end. We got to them too late. That doesn't generally happen. I mean, I have to say I have a great deal of respect and time for our psychiatric services in the NHS. It did me the world of good and was always there when I wanted it, and it will always be there when I want it. So that's great. I suppose I suppose there's still a big thing around language, and the language that is used when it comes to mental health and indeed physical health as well. But it's not just. I mean, my mother fell out of bed the other day. The paramedics came round and they said, "What medication are you on?" And just as an example, she had no idea, because the names were so ridiculous and so long and so Latin-y that who would know, who would remember? And I think that's a problem, and I think it's a problem with the language we use in the health service to talk about things and to identify things. And it's off-putting, it's frightening, it's a barrier, and it's a barrier to understanding what is wrong with me at a time when, particularly when we're talking about mental health, you are anxious, you are desperate, you are scared, and you want to know what's wrong, and sometimes the language isn't particularly clear. I'd like that, and then I'd like the government to give more money to mental health services, because they badly need them. But on the whole, I would say the staff that I've encountered in the mental health service have been great. Good.
Perfect. Thank you, Richard. So let's have a look at some of your work. We've got a little trailer of your performance of Over the Wall Picking Apples, and this will give the audience a little bit of a feel of the kind of work that you're producing. I've got a clip later on of a bit of a longer chunk, if you like, of the performance, but this is going to give people a general sort of feel of the ideas that you're working with. I think some of this material was shot at the engine room, actually. So let's see if we can find that film.
Morning, fish. Bloop, 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 bloop.
So what was wrong with me? Why was I so different?
All joking aside, ladies and gentlemen, I would remind you that suicide is not allowed in any part of the plane, and that includes the toilets front and rear. Well, of course it was hard. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. I'm going to do it, Paul. I want to do it, Paul. Help me, please. From shortness of breath to sleeplessness and diarrhea to erectile dysfunction. Oh, yes. Dinner parties around our house were a real hoot at that time.
Seriously? He's over the wall, picking apples.
Hello again. We're back. Right. So I've got another question for you, Richard. And this again is from a colleague over at Somerset Film. And what he said is, I'd probably want to ask Richard something like this. Whether you see mental health challenges being experienced by many people as a symptom of a systematic malaise in society. And if so, how you might characterise that malaise. And if we are to assume that this is indeed a symptom of a wider malaise, how you see the value of the arts in helping people face it. It's a big question.
Well, how long have you got? Symptomatic of wider malaise in society. I think, talking about this country, we have a real problem in this country, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to talk politics because I think it's a political problem. We have an establishment that cannot see beyond the economy, make more, buy more. The GDP must grow every year, otherwise we're not succeeding. Even though we know that by the GDP growing, our environment is shrinking and we are becoming a poorer place in terms of the planet. That attitude is absolutely ingrained in this society, and so it sets a lot of people up to fail because they're not in it, they're not part of it, they're not part of this economic treadmill, which is the only way in which we can judge ourselves and judge whether we are doing well. And that, to me, is the biggest cause of malaise in a huge proportion of people who don't want to go down that direction, but they don't feel that their vote counts. I mean, we've had a recent election, and yet again, what you might guess that I voted Labour all my life. I live in Somerset, I live in Glastonbury, and yet again, I'm faced with, well, who do I vote for? Because if I vote for Labour, it's a wasted vote. And I think a lot of us feel disenfranchised in that way, that we have no voice at all in government. We have no voice in what happens. We're not represented. I mean, you know, Boris Johnson has as much chance of representing me as a hedgehog. You know, with all due respect to Boris, lovely man. So I think we are, a lot of us, dispossessed, disenfranchised, disinterested, disengaged, and we therefore do get things like anxiety and depression and so on and so forth. I mean, we're going through this is a bizarre period that we're going through at the moment. We're going through the breakup of lockdown in a situation where we still have coronavirus deaths every day. I don't think any other country did that, apart from Sweden, that never did anything, but seemed to get away with it for quite some time. You know, and why are we doing that? We're doing it because we want to stimulate the economy. We want to get the economy going. And frankly, what that means is that the economy is more important than people's lives. Now, this is a nice broadcast with nice people, so I'm not going to swear, but you know, there is a B word with a double L in the middle of it, and that's what that is. It's just ridiculous and absurd. And if we think we're going to get away without a second spike, well, I'd say we haven't got a chance. And the second spike is likely going to be worse than the first. So that's why we've got idiots in control of the country, and those idiots dispossess many of us from actually participating and taking part in any kind of democratic process, or feeling in any way that we have a say, that we have a voice. And I'm sorry to be political, but sometimes one is.
Yep, that's most certainly answered that question, Richard. Thank you. We're going to have a.
You did have another bit actually about that, of what the arts can do about it. Is that right?
Yes, of course. Yeah. What role does creativity play in facing that malaise?
Well, I mean, obviously, creativity gives us the means by which we can actually present alternatives, and we can present alternative ways of being. We can present alternative ways of thinking, which is one of the reasons why governments like our present government don't like creative thinkers, because we challenge the way they think and the way they see the world. So that can be a very good way to countering those feelings of sort of feeling dispossessed. And that can be a very good way of getting through that. I would say, I mean, I don't know, maybe we'll come on to that later, but maybe maybe all I would say is it's really difficult to look at something like the arts and say that provides an answer. It might provide an answer. It might absolutely infuriate you as much as not having your vote counted, because you've then got to get funded and blah and blah and blah. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you, Richard. So we'll take a look at another piece of work that you're sort of, I think it's a work in progress. I think you'd probably describe it as such. Bipolar the Musical. So in a moment we'll watch some students from the University Centre Weston in rehearsal. They're in rehearsal, but they're also in full song and dance mode. And I was watching the clip earlier that I was going to put in this creative network, and I cannot get the song out of my head. So I think you know probably the clip of the film that we're going to show, a film that you prepared actually. I've just pulled out a little segment from it. Is there anything you would like to mention before we show that around that idea of kind of participation and how your process is kind of raising awareness?
Well, I mean, I came back to theatre as a writer and as a performer specifically because I had a breakdown in 2014, and I'd sort of struggled with depression all the way through my life since my early 20s, but but this was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before, and it had me literally on my knees and weeping and not wanting to get out of bed ever, and suicidal and all the rest of it. So I was admitted to the psychiatric services over in Wells, and eventually, I mean, I went through an awful lot of therapy before eventually I got a diagnosis of being bipolar. So for me, it was really important to tell that story, because for me it was really important to be out with that and not to hide and not to. I mean, I started talking to my family about it, to my kids about it, because previously when I'd been depressed, we swept it under the carpet because they were very young. But they, you know, there was no mistaking, you know, Dad was not right. So I started to talk to them about it, and I thought, well, if I can talk to them about it, and we can have a sensible discussion around what this is and what it does to you and how you feel, then I should have a wider discussion. And I'm lucky I can write, I can perform. Well, I think I can perform anyway. So that's what I did. So I did this one-man show over the wall picking apples, and it seemed to be sort of quite well received and everything. But it was a small, intimate show in small, intimate spaces, and I thought, well, you know, this is fine, but wouldn't it be nice to find a wider audience for this and be able to do it on a bigger platform? So I had this. I didn't have this idea. My family had the idea. I think when we were on holiday in Ibiza and we were mucking around in a swimming pool, and I was being particularly bipolar and singing, I think. So they suggested I do Bipolar the musical. And I thought, well, actually, Ping, that's a good idea, isn't it? Because it's a very popular art form, will reach more people. And so I spoke to Jed, the director, and he introduced me to Andy Collier, and the rest, as they say, is history. So that's how we came to do Bipolar the musical. And we did it as a first performance, as a scratch performance, trying out the ideas and everything with the musical theatre BA students at University Centre Western, who were great. A really, really fearless, fabulous, confident bunch of young people who brought so many new ideas to the piece that, it was great. And then, unfortunately, we were due to perform on the 24th of March, the first night, and on the 23rd of March, we got lockdown. So it's going to happen sometime. We don't know when yet, but yeah, that's been a great experience. I don't know if that's what you wanted me to say.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Well, what we'll do is we'll look at that little clip with that incredibly catchy song and dance number in it, and I want the viewers to watch, bearing in mind that it's a rehearsal, you know, it's a work in progress, but just listen to the lyrics. It'll be, when you've watched it, it'll be in your head for some time to come. So let's see if I can just find that little clip.
Crash! Ah! The engine on the right has gone. Crash! Ah! And now we can see the other one. Crash! Ah! The camera pressure's falling fast. Crash! Ah! No! The oxygen will never last. We're plummeting out of the sky, and now everybody is going to die. We were just floating on sunshine, we had our heads in the clouds, and airline meals, living like gods. We were divine, worshipped by the crowds, in reaching for duty-free and in-flight years. But now we're all gone, let our fall out of the sky. It's just a case of crash and burn, no money back and no return, no clemency, no reprieve, and no 'cause we're all gonna die, 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 we're all gonna die, 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 die.
Okay.
I think we ought to explain that's the end of Act One, and we're talking about an air crash here. They're in an aeroplane, and Richard and who's the sort of leading male and the leading female, Elizabeth Allison, are kind of related but from different dimensions. And if they meet in the same dimension, a la Doctor Who, then disaster will follow. So they meet, and there is a crash. And it's, of course, it's a mental breakdown. It's a very, very simple metaphor.
So it's funny because I was involved a couple of years ago in helping stage the Over the Wall Picking Apples when it was theatrically shown at the Engine Room, and of course, Bipolar the musical is inspired directly from that, with the same characters, the references to aeroplanes and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the nicest things about doing this is that you do a one-man show and there's only you, and you play multiple characters, and there are multiple people who are mentioned, and suddenly you're able to give them all life. So they all have characters, and they all, and it's a great joy, really.
Okay, I've got a couple of more questions from another colleague over at the Engine Room. So, are you of the opinion that involvement in the arts is an advantageous companion to mental health?
No. It's really this is really difficult, isn't it? Because I'm tempted to say yes. I'm tempted to say there are all sorts of ways in which the arts can work therapeutically, and yet I hate the application of arts as therapy. I think it's really naff. I think it's also really naff to say just because you've gone and done a workshop or you've done a series of workshops, you are suddenly an artist. I think that's an insult to artists. So I think I'm very cautious about this one. The arts are brilliant. The arts are great, and creativity and creating things is something that everybody needs to be encouraged to do, much more in this country than they currently are. The fact that music lessons for school kids have gone now, you don't have that right, is again for one of the richest countries in the world. Of course, we're only rich because we have a few billionaires who have all the money. We don't have it. That we don't have music lessons for every kid. That's appalling. That's astonishingly bad. That we're actually in the business of the government are actually in the business of discouraging people from taking arts subjects at A level and degree level. I just think it's I think it's deeply disturbing. Actually, I think it's something we should be frightened of, because it's exactly what, of course, extreme governments, fascists, communists, do when they take power. They suppress the arts because the arts challenge. They lead us to ask questions that the establishment don't like being asked. That's a long way away from arts as therapy. I apologise. I can go many miles in one question. So, I mean, I think the arts are brilliant and the arts are great. But if you're going to do it as a profession, it's just a job, and it's as stressful and has as much anxiety attached to it and as much aggro attached to it, but often probably more. We have to where are we going to get the money from? If we go to the Arts Council, great, all our eggs are in the Arts Council's basket, and we get a no response. We then have to do it again. It can be very, it can cause a lot of stress. But having said that, I mean, it's brilliant to keep creating, to be creative, to write, to sing, to dance, to play a musical instrument, whatever it is, to paint a picture. It's is a brilliant way of relaxing, and to go and do that on a weekly basis or whatever, and go and do workshops and go and do classes and things. I would definitely recommend. But I think you have to, the arts it's not an option. It's not, you can't suddenly say, oh, I'm going to be a writer or I'm going to be a painter. You're born with a certain amount of talent, and you play on that talent, you use that talent, and you nurture that talent, and then you become a writer or a painter. It's not kind of a career officer option. That probably really has upset a lot of people, and I'm really sorry, but that's what I feel.
That's what this is all about. It's about a dialogue. It's important, isn't it? Okay, we're going to go and have another look at some video. This is going back to Bipolar the musical. And incidentally, if you want to see the whole film that Richard prepared for the last digital theatre night, it's on the Somerset Film YouTube channel. So go and have a look at it. We're going to have a little look at a little clip of it. And it was great for me because very often I'll be talking to an artist and they'll say, well, I've got all these clips all over the place and I want to bring them together into a little film, and then we'll live stream it or whatever we're going to do with it. And you just presented me with a completed film, which was fantastic, which is about 35 minutes long, I think, and it just gives an overview of the main players, Jed, who you mentioned earlier, Andy Collier, yourself, of course, but really importantly, the students. So in this moment of your film, we see composer and musical director Andy Collier talking about lockdown and how it's impacted on the process, followed by some wonderful students talking about who actually have quite a philosophical perspective, or possibly more so than some of the adults involved in the process, who were quite rational and going, well, yeah, it's terrible that we're not able to carry on with the motivation, but actually it's given us time to stop and think and gather our thoughts. So let's just have a little look at this clip that's Richard's prepared. Here we go.
Workshops are funny old things, because you almost want to get it as wrong as you get it right. Because if you find out it's wrong, you can sort it. But of course, in order to do that, you need actors to play with it. And we had at UCW a wonderful team of actors who, right from the very beginning, right from auditions, showed themselves to be quite fearless and quite bold in coming forward with ideas and suggestions and ways of doing things that Richard and I hadn't thought about. There were times when Richard would throw them an extra page and a half of script out of the blue when things weren't quite going to plan. There was one occasion when Richard and I, in the car coming home, decided that we really needed to sort out a new opening number. So Richard wrote a lyric overnight, which I picked up in my email the next morning about 7 o'clock. I set the lyric to music, did the demo, got all the music sorted, and took it in to the actors that lunchtime and said, okay guys, gather round, we have a new opening number. Nobody batted an eyelid. They just sat down and learnt it. And half an hour later, we had a new opening number. And that's the kind of atmosphere that we've been working in. Which is why it was deeply disappointing. No, it's worse than that. It was awful. That we had to stop short of our goal.
I was gutted. And I was gutted.
Yeah, it was really upsetting.
Oh, that's a bummer.
The fact that it got postponed, it made me sad at the beginning because I really wanted to perform it. I really wanted to just show it to the world. But at the same time, I was happy about it. And not just happy, but happy and relieved. Because then we had more time to work on it. We had to rush so many things that now I feel like we have more time to really work on it and perfect it, because the musical really deserves it. It's a very good musical.
So how did I feel when Bipolar got postponed? Well, as excited as I was to portray a character and to do this new musical and all this new music and just perform it on stage, as much as I, was so excited to do that, I'm relieved. I was relieved, and I'm still relieved, because what it has done is it's given us time.
Now that we've had a few months since it happened, I think it was a bit of a blessing in disguise. Now we've got more time. When we go back to it, we'll have a lot more time. We can refine things and really, get up to scratch on things, which will be really good to get back to and see everyone and pick this all back up. I think it'll be really exciting.
It gives us time to think, time to craft, and well, it's given us this. Like, how cool is this? Like, this video, this whole thing, how cool is that?
How cool is that? Love it.
They're not going to like me when they go back because I've rewritten the thing, so I'm going to have to learn it all again. But that is exactly what we needed to do. We needed to be in a position where we had the time to do the rewrites, and we weren't given the time. So they're absolutely right, and they're very mature and very astute, and I pay tribute to every single one of them. I just want to confirm as well that that was not Gandalf the Grey at the beginning of that clip. It was Andy Collier, who was the composer of the piece.
Yeah, I really need to meet Andy Collier, I realised after seeing that clip. So I just got one more question to ask, and then I thought we could play a longer segment of Bipolar the Musical. So this again is a question that's a colleague has asked me to ask. Has your creative process aided you or inspired you to develop any well-being strategies or practices?
Well, to a certain extent, it's not inspired me to do it. It's compelled me to do it. I mean, I think when I came up with the sort of idea that I was going to write this play about my experience and having a breakdown and take all those things in, I had to be really, really careful that what I was producing was theatre and not therapy. To stand up on stage every night and go through therapy and sort of end up the night in tears and all that kind of thing. I mean, I've seen that before, and it really is dreadful, and it's mawkish, and it's awful, and it's not at all good theatre. So my number one thing was, this has to be a good piece of theatre. It has to be a good piece of writing. It has to be a well-performed piece, well-directed, well-designed, etc., etc. So that was a big thing that I put in place right from the start. Then there were other things, simple things like rules. I never perform the piece on consecutive nights, and I don't do that because it's extraordinarily exhausting to actually do, because I am doing drama, but I am a theatre, but I am also facing quite a few hefty demons in the period of an hour and 10 minutes or whatever it is. So I do that, and I'm also, one of the main practices that we've put in place is safeguarding. Safeguarding me. I always have a minder with me wherever I go, so there's somebody to deal with all the silly questions that come up when you get to a theatre, and somebody to sort out the dressing room, and somebody to make sure I'm comfortable, and somebody to make sure I have a cup of tea and I eat properly and all that kind of thing. So we travel with a minder. We're also really aware of the audience and the fact that some of the contents of the play may upset the audience, they may trigger the audience. So we provide a trigger sheet in advance if people want it. It's always on the website, and we signpost people to that. We then provide a free program. It's absolutely free. We don't sell it so that everybody gets it. And it includes a list of all the local services that you can go to get help. So your local Mind, your local, your Samaritans, etc., etc. And we always have the Samaritans with us. The Samaritans are at every show. There's always at least 2 volunteers because they travel in pairs and are seldom seen on their own. But they're always there, and they're always there in case somebody in the audience needs to talk. They might need to leave halfway through or whatever, and that's why they're there. And they're there for the crew, for the team, and we all look after each other, and we all do that thing where we just check in with each other regularly and say, "You okay? You all right?" Which is so simple, it's so easy, but of course, if you don't want to talk about it, if you think it's unmanly, then you don't do that kind of thing, and you really need somebody then to sort of guide you through. So we have all those practices in place, all those things in place to make sure that the team is okay, the audience are okay, and I'm okay.
Yeah, and you're talking about communication there and just talking, and there's a number of points that you make in Over the Wall Picking Apples, and that's a significant sequence, isn't it? Just that thing of talking and watching the film back of that performance from probably a year or 2 ago. You ask the audience, "Oh, what do you think number 1 is? What's number 2?" And you can hear the audience saying, "Well, it must be talking. People don't talk anymore." So yeah, we kind of know it, don't we? But it's still difficult to do for men anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not to say that it's it would be really trite to say it's not easy for women, because it's easy for women, because it's not. It can be equally as hard. It's tough all round, really.
Okay, we're going to look at a final bit of film, which is from Over the Wall Picking Apples, and it's the opening kind of few minutes where you kind of look quite surprised. There's all these people watching you. Oh, you've come to see the show. And you go through a little sequence up to the point where you become the air stewardess. So you'll know that bit very well. Is there anything you want to say about that little segment before we play it?
No, it's a sort of I think it's there because people come along and they know it's a program, it's a play about mental health, and that's a play about bipolar, and I just don't want them to sit there thinking we can't laugh, we can't enjoy this, we're going to learn some lessons here, it's going to be didactic, and that's the last thing I want it to be. I want it to be I want it to have all those sort of light moments, so that when the heavy moments come, you feel it. And I think you do feel it, but you also know that it's okay. We're gonna go into the light again, and I'm not saying it has easy answers, because it doesn't have easy answer, and there's no easy answer in Over the Wall. I'm just saying I don't want to put people off. I want them to enjoy it. I want them to laugh. I want them to see the funny side, because there is a funny side. There's a funny side of everything, because we're human. So that's what this is all about. It's setting the scene.
Okay, so we will set the scene by showing the first 3 or 4 minutes of Over the Wall Picking Apples. Let's just find that clip.
God, you covered the show, haven't you? The show, my show, ooh, serious face, depression, ooh, yeah? Oh, okay. Okay, now, right, where was I then? Yeah. Hello, my name's Richard. Okay? All right. Okay, as you can see, I'm well on my way to getting a bus pass. A bit of a paunch, a bit grey on top, but otherwise, well, not too bad. I have a lovely wife, and we have 3 children, all grown and flown now, And we live in a house on the Somerset levels. Happy days, yeah? Except I am a disappointment. You see, I should have been a girl. Elizabeth Allison. Ta-da! My parents thought that I would be delivered to their door through the village, presumably by the Royal Mail or by the Milk Marketing Board, and that I would come complete with a pink ribbon and a vagina. And when I arrived Song's vagina, my dad was so disappointed he went down the pub, and to the best of my knowledge he stayed there for the rest of my childhood. Welcome aboard this bipolar flight, flying over the Isles of Kilter, out of kilter and slightly out of kilter and bound for night time. My name is Elizabeth Allison and I'll be your in-flight attendant for the next hour or so. Please have your boarding passes ready for inspection, together with any notes from your doctor. All right, young man? You can let go of your baggage now, dear, it's all right. Before you take your seat, I'd ask you to assess your prevailing mood and then move to the appropriate seating area. So that's rage and mania at the front of the plane, paranoia and desperation at the back, and suicidal thoughts to either side by the wings. Joking aside, I would remind you that suicide is not allowed in any part of the plane, and this includes the toilets, which you can find front and rear, each of which is fitted with a fully functioning Samaritan. Please leave them as you expect to find them. Now, I'd ask you to pay attention, look at me, and listen to the following safety announcements. At times, you may hear voices. I just said that. Oh, sorry, dear. At others, you may see things. Oh, look over there! Look, 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 look! That's fine. We're all in the same boat. Well, when I say boat, I don't mean a boat because if we were in a boat, we'd have crashed in the water and we'd all be doomed. But whatever happens, and anything might, I suppose, I'd ask you to try to stay calm. And to assist with this, I will be operating a trolley service throughout the flight, dispensing a mix of antidepressants, diazepam, and mild narcotics.
Okay, we're back again, Richard.
Okay, I just nodded off there for a minute.
So yeah, so we've got the first few minutes there of Bipolar the Musicals, of Over the Wall Picking Apples. So tell me, Richard, I suppose that, it's difficult to know how this situation is going to pan out, but what are your hopes, what are your plans? In an ideal world, what's going to happen over the next few months?
Well, I suppose, the next few months. I think the next few months probably not a lot in terms of live theatre. I don't think live theatre will come back for a while yet. If it does come back for a while yet, you won't get me in there because I actually respect the fact that there is a bloody virus that there's no cure for that's going around the world. So I don't think it's going to happen this year. I think probably 2021, which is probably when we get a vaccine. So I think in the meantime, I'll certainly continue my work online and digitally. We've got more theatre nights digital edition lined up. We'll be transmitting those every month, once a month. We've got plenty of content for those. We've got plenty of people wanting to submit content. The next one is all about Wassail Theatre Company's Somerset Emergency Theatre program, which is really interesting. There's lots of commissions in there and commissioning work. I'm running a program called Alternative Endings, which is 6 commissions looking at Somerset's response to COVID-19 and how that may all pan out, what the sort of future may hold. So, and I've got a play that I've been meaning to write for about 18 months now, but I haven't had time. So I'm hoping that sometime between now and the end of the year, I'll get a good few months to sit down and write the next play. Should be fun. I think we'll probably go back. And do the musical in the spring term next year, 21. We may get a chance to do it in autumn 20, but I'd be very cautious if we did, and I'd want to make sure that there are also lots of safeguards in place for that. So yeah.
Okay, and those digital theatre nights, you can find those on Strode Theatre's Facebook page when they're broadcast live, as well as on the Somerset Film YouTube page. So, are you thinking of distributing any wider than that, do you think?
We may. I won't go into the politics behind it because it's not. This is politics with a small p. We will certainly be broadening our net and going and being hosted by the Brewhouse on the Brewhouse Facebook page, which is great and much appreciated. Thank you, Will. And we're also going to be doing with the Brewhouse a series of podcasts very much about the future of theatre, the future of theatre making in this country and in Somerset particularly, obviously. And that will be, I think that will be really worthwhile, and I think that'll be interesting. It's not sort of a gloomy look at the future. It's how can we actually, following this period of upheaval and disconnect, if you like, how can we come together as theatre makers and now affect in a different way, in a better way, the future of theatre making in Somerset and the country, and resist the temptation to go back to what was broken anyway. So it should be interesting.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for your time today on a sweltering hot day. That was really, really fantastic. So, and it's funny you talking about the future and artists coming together, and I suppose these creative networks it's very much about having a conversation about sharing inspiration, sharing ideas, and having little opportunities to showcase your work. And the creative networks aren't about a particular art form. It's not just for visual artists or just for theatre makers. It's for filmmakers, for sculptors, for all kinds of performance artists, installation artists. So keep watching the Creative Network, and if you want to present some of your work online, because we're going to be doing them online like this for the foreseeable future, I think, then do get in touch with Somerset Film, info@somersetfilm.com. So just stay with us for a little bit longer, Richard. I'm just going to mention what we're going to do next month for the Creative Network, something completely different. They always are very different. Last month we had Alison Jacobs sharing her Instagram feed with us and it was all about the photographs that she's sharing on that particular platform. So the Creative Network is very diverse. So next month we're looking at having a number of artists together, having a chat. We'll live stream it on these two platforms, Facebook and the Somerset Film YouTube. I've been chatting to an artist, Jill Bliss, who's Somerset based, and we're looking for artists who work in the moving image. They're not artists that necessarily see themselves as filmmakers, but artists that are working with moving images. So they might be working in animation, they might be working in, I don't know, live feed video and installation, they might be making straightforward films, but it's very much about the artist and the artist's approach to filmmaking. And Jill has very kindly let me show just a couple of minutes of a clip of one of her moving image experiments. So we'll have a look at that, and then we'll have some a bit more chat with Richard. So here we go. This is Smelling Apple Blossom, Smelling Lilac. Okay, we're back on, Richard. So there you got a little glimpse of some of Jill's work. And if you'd want to get involved in the creative network with Jill and myself, then yeah, just get in touch, info@somersetfilm.com. Thank you, Richard, for chatting today and sharing some of your work. It's been very insightful. And yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? You were mentioning earlier how you don't want people to come to see your shows and it be this incredibly depressing experience where you've got your head in your hands. You know, you want it to be fun, and you want it to be enlightening, and you want to have a laugh at the same time. And I guess that's often one of the most profound ways in which you can communicate an idea, isn't it? Is if you laugh at it. So clearly that element of comedy is really a key part of your practice, I suppose. Do you imagine in the future you might have a stand-up comedy slot?
Now that's a really interesting question, because it's kind of it's something I've always wanted to do. So who knows? I mean, I'd always wanted to do a one-man show, and I just couldn't think what to do it about. So the answer came along rather like a thunderbolt out of the sky. So I don't know. Perhaps I'll need the same kick up the backside with a stand-up comedy slot. I'd certainly like to give it a go. Sometime.
Okay, Richard, we'll sign off now. Thank you so much. No doubt we'll meet again soon, because we'll be supporting you with the next Digital Theatre Nights. The next Creative Network is on Wednesday the 29th of July. It's always the last Wednesday of the month. Do you know off the top of your head when the next Digital Theatre Nights is, Richard?
It's the second Wednesday of the month, so the second Wednesday in July. So that's what, something like the 14th or something.
Okay.
Right.
So watch this space, or it's also going out on the Strode Theatre Facebook page. Okay then, thank you so much, Richard. I promised that I would just put that support information up again at the end. So I'll do that, and I'll say goodbye now, Richard. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.